When I first moved to Sunnyvale Estates, I thought I found the perfect place. Quiet streets, tidy lawns, and a strong sense of community. But I quickly learned that behind the carefully curated flower beds and manicured sidewalks lurked something much uglier. Karen Matthews, president of our HOA and self-declared queen of the neighborhood. Things were fine for the first few years. I paid my dues, kept my lawn trimmed, and mostly kept to myself. That all changed when my mother came to live with me after a major stroke. Her doctor said she'd likely regain some mobility with time and therapy, but for now, she needed a wheelchair. Naturally, I built a small ramp at my front entrance. Nothing fancy, just a sturdy, well-constructed, city-permitted wooden ramp that matched the porch and made it possible for Mom to come and go with some dignity. I made sure to do everything by the book. Permits filed, ramp built to code, even stained to match the porch. I thought I was being responsible and thoughtful. What I didn't anticipate was that the ramp will become a problem in the eyes of Karen Matthews. If you've never met someone who treats HOA rules like the Constitution, let me paint a picture. Karen was in her late 50s, always perfectly put together with an icy blonde bob that seemed immune to wind or humidity. She had the kind of resting expression that suggested she was constantly judging the world, and finding it lacking, she ran our HOA with the zeal of a medieval inquisitor. Neighbors learned quickly to avoid eye contact at meetings, unless they wanted a lecture about garden gnomes or unregulated mailbox heights. 2 days after the ramp was finished, I was helping Mom test it out when I saw a bright yellow envelope stuck to my door. Violation notice was printed in big, bold letters across the top. In Karen's unmistakable cursive was written, "Unauthorized structural modification. All exterior changes require HOA pre-approval. Remove within 72 hours or face daily fines of $100. I wasn't especially worried. The ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, is very clear. Reasonable accommodations like wheelchair ramps are protected by federal law. HOA rules can't override that. I figured this was just a misunderstanding, maybe a formality. I put the notice aside, assuming a simple conversation would clear things up. The next morning, I was headed to work, still half asleep and running on no coffee, when I saw Karen at the end of my driveway, flanked by 2 HOA board members like some kind of suburban firing squad. "Mr. Reynolds," she called out in that too sweet tone that barely concealed her contempt. "I see our notice is still up on your door. Perhaps you haven't seen it." I took a deep breath and gave her my best polite smile. "Good morning, Karen. Yes, I saw it, but there's been a misunderstanding. This ramp is for my mother, who's recovering from a stroke. I have full city permits and under the ADA." She cut me off with a sharp flick of her perfectly manicured hand. "The city doesn't run Sunnyvale Estates, Mr. Reynolds. We have our own bylaws, and all exterior changes must be approved in advance. You submitted nothing. That ramp needs to be removed. We have standards to maintain." The 2 board members nodded like background dancers in a bad reality show. Trying to keep my cool, I opened my car and pulled out the folder I prepared. Copies of the permits, ADA documentation, even photos of the ramp that showed how well it blended with my home's design. "I understand wanting to maintain neighborhood standards," I said, handing her the papers. "But federal law overrides HOA rules when it comes to accessibility and disability rights. I'm happy to discuss it civilly, but the ramp is staying." She stared at the folder, lips pursed, as if the paperwork had personally insulted her. I could tell this wasn't the end of it, and I was right. "I'm happy to discuss this at the next board meeting, but the ramp stays," I told Karen calmly. Her face flushed an angry shade of red. Without even looking at the folder of documents I'd handed her, she snatched it out of my hands. "We'll see about that, Mr. Reynolds. This neighborhood has rules for a reason. No one gets special treatment." She turned on her heel and stormed off, her 2 loyal board members in tow. I could hear her muttering about property values and setting a precedent as she marched down the sidewalk. At the time, I still held out hope. I assumed she'd eventually realize she was in the wrong, that the HOA's lawyer would explain the ADA to her, and she'd back off. I was wrong. 3 days later, I came home from work to find my mom sitting by the living room window in her wheelchair, visibly shaken. "Someone came while you were out," she said softly, her voice wavering. They took photos, measured the ramp. I asked them what they were doing, and they just said they were documenting violations. Then they left. I tried to reassure her, told her I'd handle it, but inside I was furious. They hadn't just come after me now. They were intimidating my mother. That evening, I wrote a formal letter to the entire HOA board, citing the specific laws protecting disability accommodations. I demanded they stop all further action immediately. For good measure, I copied the city's accessibility compliance office. I expected a written reply. Instead, I got retaliation. The next morning, I left for work before dawn. When I returned that evening, the ramp was gone, demolished, with splinters littered the front yard like the aftermath of a hurricane. My doorbell camera caught every second. Karen standing proudly on my front lawn, clipboard in hand, supervising two contractors from a local company as they pried the ramp apart with crowbars and smashed it to pieces with sledgehammers. My mom had been trapped inside the house all day. She missed her physical therapy appointment because she couldn't get down the stairs without assistance. When I saw the tears in her eyes and embarrassment on her face, something in me shifted. Not rage, but something colder, sharper, determined. I gently helped her down the stairs and into the car, then drove her to my sister's house for the night. On the way home, I called my attorney, saved the footage from my camera, and started making calls. The next morning, everything looked perfect in Sunnyvale Estates, the kind of weather that made real estate agents salivate. Sunshine bounced off every roof tile and car hood. Birds chirped in perfectly trimmed trees. I took the day off work and sat on my porch, sipping coffee and waiting. I started with the city's accessibility office, then the local building inspector, then the police department. Each call ended the same. "We'll be there shortly." Sure enough, right on cue, Karen strutted up the walkway around mid-morning, clipboard in hand, smugness radiating off her like cheap perfume. "I see you finally complied with our regulations, Mr. Reynolds," she said with a smirk, gesturing to the empty spot where the ramp had been. "Though you really should clean up that mess. Section 8.3 of our bylaws clearly prohibits unsightly construction materials visible from the street." I took a long sip from my mug and smiled. "Good morning, Karen. Actually, I didn't remove the ramp. Your hired contractors did, without my permission, on camera, and in violation of federal law." Her smug expression cracked. "I especially enjoyed the part where you told them to, quote, make sure it can't be rebuilt quickly. Very thorough of you." She blinked, thrown off for just a moment, but Karen, being Karen, quickly tried to regain control. "As president of this HOA, I have full authority to remove violations when homeowners refuse to comply," Karen snapped, her voice shifting into that formal, clipped tone she used to shut people down at meetings. I nodded slowly. "Fascinating. I'd love to hear you explain that legal theory to the city inspector, who should be arriving any moment now, and the ADA compliance officer. Oh, and the police, since destroying over $11,000 worth of property is a felony in this state. They might also be interested in your interpretation of how HOA bylaws override federal disability laws." Karen visibly paled. I'd never seen her speechless before. Her hands trembled slightly as her eyes darted toward the street, just in time to see a marked city vehicle pulling up to the curb. "You're bluffing," she said, voice suddenly uncertain. But then came the flashing lights of a police cruiser rolling in behind the city car. "Oh, and one more thing," I said casually. "I'll be filing a civil suit this afternoon. Damages, legal fees, emotional distress, especially for my mother. I imagine the other board members will be thrilled to know their dues might have to cover the legal costs. I've got clear doorbell footage, too. This won't take long in court." She didn't respond. For a second, I thought she might faint. Her carefully curated image, the flawless exterior, the power-tripping posture, was beginning to crumble in real time. "You can't do this," she hissed under her breath, the panic in her voice now unmistakable. "Do you even understand what this will do to me? I'm on the Chamber of Commerce board. I work in real estate. This will ruin me." I stepped aside as the city inspector and police officer approached. "Maybe you should have thought of that before you ordered a sledgehammer taken to a federally protected accessibility ramp, Karen. Federal law tends to take this stuff pretty seriously. What followed was 2 hours of official statements, detailed measurements, photos of the damage, and an increasingly anxious Karen trying to spin the story into something that didn't end with her in cuffs. The officer watched the video footage from my doorbell camera repeatedly, taking notes, pausing to ask questions like, who authorized this again? And who paid the contractors? By late afternoon, it was over. Karen was arrested and escorted to the station for criminal property damage and violation of federal disability rights. The ADA fine alone, $775,000. And my civil suit hadn't even been filed yet. The contracting company, clearly spooked and eager to avoid legal blowback, immediately offered to rebuild the ramp for free and submitted written statements confirming that Karen personally hired them, claiming it was official HOA business. That evening, the HOA held an emergency meeting. It lasted less than 10 minutes. The vote to remove Karen as president was unanimous. Her name was stripped from every community board, bulletin, and website before she even made it back from the police station. When she returned, bailed out and slapped a restraining order requiring her to stay at least 100 feet from my property, her entire world had collapsed. 3 of her real estate listings had already been reassigned to other agents by her firm. Her reputation was officially radioactive. The next morning, I stood in my front yard supervising the contractors as they rebuilt the ramp, wider, stronger, and safer for my mother than before. That's when I saw it. Karen's luxury SUV crept slowly past my house. She didn't stop, but she made eye contact. Her expression was one of stunned disbelief, like she still couldn't wrap her head around the fact that her actions had consequences. For a moment, she looked like she might say something. Instead, a man in a suit stepped out from the sidewalk, approached her car, and handed her an envelope. She opened it, blinked, then turned to stare at me. It was from my attorney, the formal filing of my civil suit for $150,000 in damages. Her mouth opened and closed silently, like a fish gasping on dry land, as the reality of her situation finally sank in.